Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to go over how to clean and lubricate your K-100 pistol here from Grand Power. Now, with all my clean and lubricate videos, I tend to look at it as if this is your first gun, you've never owned a firearm before in your life, and we're going to get into the absolute basics of how to do it, what we use, tips, techniques, all that stuff. We'll also show you how to assemble and disassemble it along the way, of course, because that certainly is part of it. But without any more yapping from me, let's get into the actual process. Before we get started with the actual how-to process, we'll show you what we're going to be using. Pretty simple stuff, nothing earth-shattering at all. So we have this little barrel cleaner, and this is actually a Glock one, but one very similar comes with this K-100. We have this polymer pick. Now these are tipped-in polymer picks, and one thing that's really nice about these is, number one, they're like $5 on Amazon, and number two, they're polymer, so they're not actually going to scratch your gun up. A lot of metal picks are harder than the actual guns themselves, or at least the finishes, and will mar it. These will not do so. We have a super high-speed tactical Walmart toothbrush here. Any toothbrush, of course, will do. And just some cut-up pieces of t-shirt that we're going to use. We're using break-free CLP. This is actually a repurposed bottle. It's a body spray bottle that my wife used to have, and I repurposed it. But of course, there are spray bottles online and stuff like that that you guys can pick up. And this is CLP as well. Again, just a repurposed old CLP bottle that we refilled. So, nothing too fancy at all. If you guys want to use solvents, I will say this, you're more than welcome to. I just find that for 99.9% of gun cleaning, you don't need to. And CLP sort of does everything pretty well, nothing exceptionally well, but everything pretty well. And for me, it works well and has worked well throughout the years. So let's get to it. First, we'll clear the gun. So we're just going to drop our magazine here, set that off to the side, and we're going to make sure the chamber's clear, and it is. So the actual removal of the slide on this pistol is a little bit different than a lot of the ones you're used to. It actually may be a little bit awkward here underneath the camera. I just kind of thought about that. So we're going to see. But essentially what we're going to do is you have these little pull down tabs here up front. You guys can see those. And we're going to pull the slide back and up while pulling those down. So it's one of those things that you sort of need 3 hands for, but we'll see if we can make it work. So I'm actually going to pull down the right hand because I'm right-handed. And actually, if we can, let's do that. Let's try this here underneath the camera and pull back and up and then forward like that. So that's kind of how you do it. The recoil spring comes out. You'll note our barrel here will come out. You kind of have to twist it and pull it out like that. And that's it. So that's their field strip pistol. You can see the actual guide rod here stays in the gun, and we'll get to cleaning. I always like to clean the actual barrel first and just get some of that CLP working, because one thing that CLP does is breaks down carbon. So we're gonna let it start doing that while we're cleaning the rest of the pistol. So we'll push that through, and after we put a little bit of CLP on there, and you can see we certainly have some carbon in there. And we're going to let that sit. Now the CLP in there is going to break down the carbon inside the barrel, and we'll set that off to the side. Now what I'm going to do is spray CLP into the actual slide itself, just a couple squirts, but you want to make sure that your slide is pointed down, because you don't want to get a bunch of CLP in your firing pin channel. Generally speaking, you'll be all right, but if you can avoid it, that's sort of a good thing. So we'll spray that in there and just kind of work that around inside the pistol. Somehow there's actual dirt in this pistol, which I don't really understand, because I certainly didn't do any torture testing, but I can see it in there, so it must just be shooting out in the sandy field. So we're just going to work that around and loosen up all the carbon that's in the slide there, paying special attention to the rails, which we'll get back to here in just a second. We will set this off to the side and come right back to it. Now what we're going to do here with the frame is essentially the exact same thing. So we're going to pull a little CLP back here and a little bit up front, and we're just going to spread it around with that toothbrush. Again, what you're doing here is loosening the carbon and just letting the CLP start to break it down. So we want to make sure we get up underneath the rails on the side, back here on the hammer. And some of you guys who are a little bit entrepreneurial are going to realize that you can kind of poke stuff in there if you had one of these picks. I don't recommend really poking in there at all. You don't need to do it for basic field maintenance. We're just going to wipe around everything you can see, and that's what they want you to do. One of the nice things about the K-100 barrels is that they're so well machined that really you can wipe any sort of excess carbon off. So I'm just going to put a little bit of CLP on here. It helps if I open it. and put a little bit on there. And we're just going to work around with the toothbrush, but really you could do this with your fingers because there's really not much on there that hasn't been wiped off by me handling it already. And I'm just going to take a patch or a t-shirt and just kind of wipe it down and wipe all that up. One point that I want to make here while we're looking at it is that this flat surface right here, which is a locking point, sometimes gets a lot of carbon built up in there, so just make sure you wipe that off. Same here with these little lugs right here on the back. Now this one of course is very clean, but they're not always going to be like that after you're done shooting. Staying with the barrel, we're going to run another patch through it with a little bit of CLP on there. You could actually start doing it dry at this point, but I suppose that's sort of personal preference. If you guys are new to cleaning guns, make sure, and you are using t-shirts, make sure you cut them in small enough pieces that they don't get jammed in there. It's better to be too small than it is to be too big. That can be frustrating. So we're going to work that through and just keep pushing those through until they're as clean as you want it to be. I suppose clean is a relative term. Everybody has a different standard, so you can push them through until they're white or really just stop right here. The slide's been sitting off for a while, and what we're going to do here is just start wiping everything up. Anywhere that you can get to with your fingers, get in there. Also down here in the guide rod hole, make sure you get in there, wipe that up. As you can see, there's plenty of carbon in there. And again, the whole time we're doing this, you just kind of want to angle the slide down. You can see there's pretty big milling cuts in there. We're going to take that tipped-in polymer pick and just work it in there. And again, because it's polymer, there's no worry that it's actually going to scratch anything. And we're going to work in these rails here with this patch. So just get down in there. That grinding noise on the metal really would drive my wife nuts, but she's not here, so not a problem. And we want to make sure we get up on the face as well. So right up here where the round sits when you're firing it, you can actually see some carbon built up in there. The next thing we're going to want to do is right here on the extractor, get up underneath there. So again, with the polymer pick, not a big deal. You can get right up in there and just kind of work and make sure that extractor is clean. Maybe hard to see, but that's what I'm doing. I'm on the back side of the extractor, getting all the carbon out. So we're going to do that again. Just kind of give it another once over. You can see we definitely have some dirt in there, but a lot less than when we started. So basically, you're just going to keep doing this until, again, you have it as clean as you want to be. For a basic, post-range trip, I'd say this is fine, but some guys out there like to do a sort of white glove and get it a little bit cleaner. So keep going until your heart's content. Just like with the slide, we're going to work all the areas that we can with our finger first, getting up sort of the big pieces of carbon. You can see that thing is actually a polished feed ramp. Couldn't tell before because of all the carbon, but we're getting it. And just again with the tipped-in polymer pick, anywhere you can get to under here, go ahead and do so, but don't force anything like we talked about earlier. Big one. This gun is actually nicer than most in that there's not a lot of places you can get into. The trigger mechanism is relatively covered. Some guns, it's really tempting to get in there and start poking around at the springs, but this one's not too bad. So anywhere you can get to, just wipe in there. But again, if you feel resistance, definitely recommend you stop there. And here on the rails, again, we're going to work in there on both sides, because of course that's where the slide is actually riding on the frame. And you want to make sure that's clean to minimize the friction that you're getting while you're firing. And one thing I like to do as well is just take a dry patch and work it up in the mag well. You don't want any lubrication in there, but since we saw dirt in the slide, you definitely want to get in there a little bit. Now we're going to move on to lubrication. This pistol really doesn't need a lot of lubrication. It's a very reliable design overall, but right here on these little lugs, we're going to put a drop of oil on there. Just kind of work that around with our fingers, make sure it's on both sides. We're going to also take a drop of oil and put it right here on this little piece that you see is polished from the wear. And then now you can either put the oil in the actual rails here on the slide, or you can do it on the frame. We're going to do it on the frame, so I think it's a little bit easier to show on camera. And what we're going to do here on the barrel is just put a couple drops on there and just work it all around to get a thin layer of CLP all the way around. And this surface right here is kind of a camming surface, so make sure you get a little bit in there as well, because that is rotating out when you actually fire the gun. Now we're going to put the barrel back in there. Just kind of let it work back into place, like so. That's how you want it. Now we're going to move over to the frame after we set that slide aside. And again, wherever there's wear, generally you want a light coat of oil. So there's a little bit here on the back, just kind of on the top of the frame insert, all that steel frame insert, and then the points here. You can see some wear there, there, and there. It's the same on each side. So we're just going to put a drop of oil on each. I say oil, it's really CLP. So there you go. And that's it for lubrication. Now at this point we're going to reassemble the pistol. And you can put your guide rod back in, the spring I should say, and it doesn't matter, it goes either way. So there's no specific direction you have to have it in. Now to reassemble, we're just going to rotate the barrel over so that way it would be in the same position it would be when it was firing. And of course with all the oil in my hands it's a little bit slippery, but we're going to slide it forward here like that. So that way it can be reassembled. If the barrel's not forward, you won't be able to get it on the slide. So one thing I want to point out there is that, if you're wondering why you can't just do the traditional ride it on the rails there, that's why. The actual ejector will hit the back of the slide. So assembling it is pretty much the opposite of taking it apart. However, you do need 3 hands, just like you did to take it apart, especially if you're doing it under a camera. So forgive me if I sort of block something, but all we're going to do is line the recoil spring and guide rod up into the slot and slide. And then we're going to pull down on these 2 tabs and pull it back and over. I'm telling you, if you've never done this, it can be a little bit frustrating, so be patient. But that is what there is to it. That's all there is to it. Now we're just going to do a quick functions test. Make sure the trigger resets, and it does. Safety works as designed, and that's it. It's reassembled. That's all there is to it, guys. Your gun is ready to go back on the range or go back in your safe, however you prefer to do it. Obviously, it's a pretty good gun. We will have a review of this up here shortly, but that's how you clean and lubricate it. If you guys have any questions, by all means, post down below in the comment section. You can also post over at my Facebook page as always. But thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for subscribing. Hopefully this helps some folks out there, and we'll see you in the next video.